live, preparing to live stream, waiting for it to buffer. Meanwhile, keep letting us know your favorite summer ice cream flavor or favorite fruit to eat in the summer, specifically summer here, because we're right in the midpoint of summer, mid-July. All right, we are live. Love all the flavors y'all comment in the chat. Keep engaging with each other. It's going to be a super engaging, exciting session. And really quick, feel free, this event will be recorded and you'll be emailed the recording afterwards too, and it'll be accessible on Discord. So in case you missed part of it, had to drop off halfway, you have access to it. And we're so excited to be here today with Nico, Diana, Yuri, and Kai on a panel discussion on introduction to design and product, where you'll find out how they made it into industry as fellow product designers and product managers, and how they collaborate cross-functionally with each other, what you are all doing at this product splash event, collaborating with fellow designers and PM to make a product. And I'm Grace. I founded Design Buddies. I also lead design. So we're one of the co-hosts of Product Splash along with Product Buds, and full-time, I am a product designer at Electronic Arts, where I work on a lot of tech and marketing products. And on to you, Lisa, for Product Buds.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa. I'm a content strategist at Product Buds, which is a community of budding product managers. So similar to what this sorry, there's a dog. Similar to what Design Buddies does before PMs. So as Grace said, we're collaborating on this awesome opportunity. So no matter if you're interested in design or PM, I hope you can find something useful in today's session. More about me. So besides being content strategist on Product Buds, so I help come up with new content ideas and also write the newsletter when we have exclusive opportunities for anyone interested in PM or just product in general, so product marketing, product design as well. But outside of that, my 9-to-5 job is at SAP. So I am currently an intern at SAP, and I do communications, global communications for the in-house makerspace. So yeah, so I guess on to our speakers.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. And during this event, we have some pre-submitted questions from you all, what you all submitted on Luma. And also during this event, we'll be sharing a Slido link in the chat where you can further submit more questions that we ask live. And so we'll try to prioritize the ones on Slido, but we have some really great ones that you all submitted on Luma. And during this event, we'll also be sharing a networking sheet on the chat and our speakers' social media. So you're welcome to connect with them. And we really encourage all of you to share your takeaways from our event, tagging all of our speakers, Design Buddies, and Product Buds on social media, and use the hashtag ProductSplash2021. Every week, we select a random person to win a free Adobe Creative Cloud. And Nicole Nicole actually won our first one. So definitely keep sharing your takeaways. And the more you share on socials, the higher likelihood you'll be chosen for free 1 year Creative Cloud, which unlocks you to all the apps. So make sure to tag all of our speakers and also Design Buddies and Product Buds. So with that, we'll transition on to the speakers, and their social media links will be dropped in the. And we'll start with introduction. So we're gonna go in the order I see you all in Zoom. And so we're just gonna do with profession, how you got to where you are today, and a fun fact about yourself. And Nico, I see you first. So we would love to hear your intro.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm the lead UX designer in a company called Zebra Technology. I'm under innovation and design team. So it's a little bit wacky in the way that how you structure the team, but think about it more like horizontal corporate support consultancy. So rather than a vertical embedded team, I'm in a team that more like support everyone, basically. So how I get to this point, my journey, damn, let me think about it. How long does it go? It's been a while. So actually, I'm trained professionally as an industrial designer in school. So I have design background, and put it that way, right? So I was majoring in that, and then I got an internship. At some point, just the client say, hey, we need to do this thing called interaction design. Anybody willing to do it? That's how I started, really. And I through that, I become a consultant. I work in the agency, work on the client project. The same client actually become my employer. So that's how I become an in-house staff designer. That's basically how I get to this point. The fun fact about me, I don't know. I consider my polyglot, so I speak Japanese, Mandarin Chinese, Cantonese Chinese, and learning more. We'll see. Yep, that's it.
Awesome, thanks for sharing. I also speak Mandarin Chinese.
Awesome.
就喜欢说中文，对 yeah.
不错，不错。
Yeah, no, yeah, Diana, we would love to hear your intro now.
Awesome. Sounds good. I don't speak Chinese, unfortunately. That would be really cool, but that will not be my special skills that I will share with you. I'm Diana. I'm a product manager at Shopify. I've been here for about 6 years. I didn't actually start in product, didn't actually start in tech. I was actually, my journey started in film and television. I majored in audio design and audio engineering, and that's kind of the first part of my career for the first, I think, 5 years. Worked on documentaries, worked at Discovery as well as Canadian television station. Yeah, how I pivoted, I found a role in IT. I said, I'll give computers a try. I like computers in general. I build my own to play video games. So give it a go. And I kind of just pursued different opportunities on my way to, learning new skills and narrowing down what I want to focus on, all the way to joining Shopify as an IT lead, building out those teams, and then moving over to security to gather more skills. And it's in security where I kind of started working on product program management, did a lot of different launches for authentication services and a lot of security products. And then I found an opportunity on the search team within Shopify, was offered a product management position there, and I kind of just grew my career pivoting to different product teams at Shopify. So definitely not linear. Just take the opportunities that I get and, not be really afraid of change. That's my big thing. Fun fact about me, I pick up every craft you can think of and make 2 things. And then once I'm pretty good at it, I discard it and pick another craft, because that's me.
Also, I love that. Definitely don't be afraid to take risks, because the worst thing I see is the worst thing that can happen is it doesn't work out, but you always learn something new about yourself. And Yuri, would love to hear your intro too.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm Yuri Zaremba. Nice to meet you all. I'm currently a senior product designer at Facebook. Prior to being at Facebook, I was also at Amazon for a long time, as well as Microsoft. Originally, I'm from Ukraine. Fun fact about me is I'm 100% self-taught, never even did like a boot camp or anything like that. And I really just built my career on my freelance and agency gigs early on, and then eventually kind of parlayed that to move into big tech 10 years ago. And also I post mentorship clips and do group mentorship sessions at uxcandor.com. So glad to be here. Communities in my blood.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I'm also self-taught, so high five. Study engineering and I'm doing design. Cool. Kai, would love to hear your intro.
Hi, thanks for that, Grace. I didn't know you were self-taught. That's so cool. So hi, I'm Kai. I went to school in Waterloo for software engineering, but eventually found out that I actually enjoyed product better. And so I pitched an internship. I basically made my own PM role for an internship, and that's how I broke in. So I guess that's how I got started. And then I did some more internships, also did a startup along the way. And now I'm in the APM program at Yahoo, working on commerce experiences, so growth and commerce projects. And a fun fact, I guess I grew up in Dubai, and I currently live in a co-living house. Which it feels like a dorm. So I feel like there's a lot of different perspectives, and that's something that's been cool to have even after graduating.
That's pretty cool. I'm always interested in living in a co-living space as well. And I also studied computer science in school, so high five. And yeah, I'll hand it off to Lisa for our first question.
Yeah, okay. So again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to just drop it in the link that is in the chat and stuff. So we would love to see what you guys in particular want to hear. But we have some pre-prepared questions that I will be using in the time being. But again, feel free to use the chat. Let's make this super interactive and engaged. But first of all, and speakers, if anyone wants to answer, feel free to just step in. But the first question we have is, if you could start over with everything you know now, how would you approach your learning? And additionally to that, I guess, what advice would you give college students to help level up their careers? So this kind of goes with our whole self-taught theme, I think, which is kind of cool. But yeah, if anyone wants to step in, feel free to go ahead.
Okay, I mean, I'll give it a shot then. So because, you know, I mean, a lot of us didn't take some sort of like interaction design master degree, or I went to a boot camp, or you have it, right? So basically that, you know, I have to figure out what user experience deliverable really mean, whilst actually I'm on the job and getting paid for it. So that was a challenge for me, because like, how do you deliver something that you don't even know what to deliver to the client in a way, right? So you got to learn from there. So I spent quite a bit of time to investigate, to sort of like pick up some books regarding, at that point, the interaction design, that's the name for it, right? Just soak up very specific knowledge, particularly about the vocabulary and terms, right? When you have a design critique section with the client, if they're referring to something and you have no idea, you're doing a blank, that's a big no-no, right? Fortunately, I have some help from a senior level designer at the moment too, but you know, you got to pick it up, you know. So it took me a couple of years to feel confident about my, you know, what I was doing, right? What I'm capable to, what I'm doing. So that's that. So I was just say that, like, you know, if I look back, I wish, you know, I have the confidence. Everyone should build up the confidence of the design choice you make, basically, right? Think through the decision you make and really learn how to articulate your thought process to the others, especially non-designers, right? Sometimes between designer, we can talk, we know the term, we know how things work, we can imagine how things come together, but a lot of time you kind of like explain it to non-designers. So I think that should be something that you learn and get along your journey, really. It doesn't come like magically, you know, there's no book to read something and next day you can pick up on it. That's built up based on experience. But if you have an early start, right? I wait a few years. So you have early start, that'd be a good thing. That would be my input to this question.
If I may,
After that as well. Go ahead.
Good.
No, we're too friendly. I'll always say go ahead because I'm Canadian. So you go ahead.
I'll be fast. I'd say learn by doing what you actually like want. So my career was pretty built on client work. So I got to learn by doing what other people wanted me to do. But I'd say in retrospect, that's at the expense of things that maybe I want to do now. So if you want to learn something, just go and figure it out, right? So like if you want to do automotive UI, just use your spare time to work on automotive UI. Like right now, I think that there's going to be a lot of interesting work around neural interfaces, right? So like you can't even find anything to reference on Google, right? Like how would you tackle that problem? Just pick something that you find really interesting and then push yourself to do a good job at it. And don't wait for something to fall in your lap, whether it's a job or, you know, a dream client or whatever. Just do what you want to do.
Yeah, I definitely add to that. Actually, both points. Firstly, the fact that you could, in school, you take on projects and you work on them end to end. You start developing gut instincts based on the subject matter that you're working in. Doesn't matter what it is. I can look back at the film projects that I've been on. I can look back at the IT projects I've been on. And those are the steps that help me develop my skills as a product manager. They're not negated just because you didn't have the title. I made clear decisions. I understood why I made those decisions, and I was confident in the outcome of what the decisions would kind of create for the product or the project or the film. And building that gut instinct, I think, is extremely critical in product. I can tell you even now that I doubt myself and the decisions that I make, and only after looking back, I go, I was right with my first instinct. And you just get better at that with time. And I think all of that is yeah, it's truly just take on the things that you like. You're all part of this community. Like, that's already a really great step. And like, finding those opportunities, they're not going to, just fall in your lap. You're going to have to make the effort to do those things. But you would be surprised at how many tangents, like different industries and different tangents, that you can kind of grab onto that teach you the skills that you need to be a product manager, and be able to ask any question and be confident to, not be the person in the room that says, this is a stupid question, guys, but like, can I? And I'm like, there's no stupid questions. I hate hearing that term. And just be confident that like, people are probably thinking what you're going to ask. And so you should just ask it and feel confident that you're going to get an answer that's going to help everybody in the room. So things I learned from school, like, film is very collaborative. Communication is super critical, not being in your head, and all those things. And then going with those gut instincts to see where they take you. I think in the industry, you'll never have all the answers and the data points that they tell you in school that you're going to have. So you have to become comfortable with the risks that your decisions are going to like inevitably have.
Yeah, I love that. Definitely just do it. And Kai, did you also want to answer this one too?
I think there's been a lot of good advice, so maybe we can keep it going.
Yeah, for sure. And thank you all so much for sharing. I definitely feel like me as a new grad transitioning from school to industry, like nobody really knows what they're doing, and that is okay. If people judge you for asking questions, then they're probably not the people you want to work for. So definitely, it's totally okay and normal to ask questions. So don't be afraid. Even if it's still late in the game, don't be afraid to ask questions. Like, the worst that could happen is people don't answer, but the fact that you're curious, it also like drives people's attention too. So I also can relate with imposter syndrome as well. Definitely not alone here. But also just being comfortable and taking risks, like what Jack highlighted in the chat too. And we're going to transition to our next question. I'm going to try to lump a few questions together, since there's a lot of great questions submitted on the chat on Slido and also on Luma. And this one's about working cross-functionally. Kind of like, what skills in cross-team collaboration are the most important, and or differently worded, how can I be a better teammate to my product manager, or vice versa to my designer? So best practices when collaborating with design and PM, or any examples of experiences. And I see you're muted. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so like I'm at Facebook, and like everything at Facebook is about like teamwork and cross-functional partners, because like no one can do anything without like 10 other teams also like being cool with it. So some things that come to mind is like, like just among, so for teammates, so people immediately kind of in your circle, always think about how to make them look good. Don't worry about making yourself look good. Just be conscious of their success. Like, give as much credit as you can, as often as you can. Just like remove yourself from the equation. Like, the more you do that, ironically, like the better off you're also going to be. And also like expect the best from them. So like this kind of also bleeds into XFN. So like both from your peers, but also from your partners, like have a very high bar of how you expect them, like of like the quality that you expect out of them. And this might sound kind of aggro, but like I think it actually leads to some of the most meaningful relationships that you'll have at work. So like what I mean by this is like, if you've seen in one situation that someone just knocked it out of the park and was like incredible and was able to drive and do all these really good things, but then just this week they don't seem to care, they're not engaging, they're not following up on stuff, they miss a deadline, whatever. Instead of like putting them on the spot in that situation, like immediately book a one-on-one and just like immediately just like bring it up. Like, hey, like you seem to not be yourself. Is there anything that I can help you out with? And because this happens so rarely, right? People respond very strongly. And it doesn't come off as like, hey, you're judging me. It comes off as like, oh my God, you actually care. I'm actually having a horrible month, right? So just the people stuff. And then lastly, on the collaboration side, be super intentional with partners. So what that means is don't just schedule a bunch of meetings and expect something productive to happen. Like be, I like to tell people, like, be overly formal until you've gotten so far that you can be super casual. Don't start casual. Like, have an agenda, have goals, challenge, document decisions, do all these like really like intense mechanisms that look intimidating until everyone's like, hey, we get it. Like, let's, like, we're not worried about that anymore. And then you can bring it down to casual.
Yeah, I love that. Just coming in with just expecting the best out of them and reaching out to help, and also saying things like, oh, you're not doing your work, but instead, like, I noticed that, just like saying that I instead of like the you, instead of like banging people, are also super, super important. Anyone else?
And it just like if you'll forget your projects, but I promise you this, like, the people that you actually like take aside like that, they will never forget you, and they will like treat you as a friend for the rest of your life. Like, it's always, it'll be like a highlight in your career, the times that you do that. And if you ever come across someone that is bold enough to do that to you, or like, you'll feel the same way.
Yeah, definitely done that to other people as well. So I kind of realized that. And Nico, I saw you unmute.
Yeah, just, since Yuri is talking from a designer point of view, I just want to echo some of the points he mentioned and add a few things on top of it. Like in sort of like a real life collaboration or at least for a big corporation like my employer, it's a lot of like teaching each other while you're going through the process, really. Like when we're working with the PM, with the solution architect, with the engineering stakeholder, they don't really know what you're doing, right? So you kind of have to walk them through the process and say, hey, here's why I'm doing this, is what's this for? I need some answers from your, your understanding how things goes, your expertise. Meanwhile that you're just absorbing and learning from others at the same time, right? So you get a newer set of context on what you're working on. And then we just sit down and say, hey, this is a terrible idea. This is a great idea. This sucks. All right, let's come back tomorrow. Let's have a margarita tonight. So kind of like that dynamic interaction happens all the time, right? That's what you mean collaborate, right? And just back and forward as much as you need it until everybody align, really. Everybody has a stake, stakeholder. Everybody has a stake in this. Everybody understand we're good to go, good about it, right? However it takes. Echo something like how to be better design teammate for the PM and other stakeholder. I would say, you got to be confident, right? You got to let other people feel like you know what you're doing. Even you don't know that, you got to fake. But you learn, there's, communities here, Google's out there, you learn, you figure it out along the way. But yeah, I say be confident, but lower your defensiveness, because designers tend to marry their own idea really quickly and be very defensive about it, right? A lot of times really about other people might not really understand what you're trying to do. You just need to be patient and explain, right? To communicate, to articulate, really kind of like separate yourself from your design solution to start with. It's not about you, really, at the end of the day, right? It's great that you have an input on this and you're going to do a good job. And Yuri mentioned a lot of like a design artifact, right? Or the documentation. This is really, for me, that's really about putting some time and effort to drive conversation, right? You make something so people respond to it. So that help drive some of the conversation. And when you're doing that, try to ask questions to gain clarity and mutual understanding, really, right? Like, I don't understand what you're saying. Do you mean this? Do you mean that? Okay, you mean this. Okay, we're good. So there's no assumption, right? a lot of times there will be a lot of bad assumption that people assume you to do this, but you end up doing something else, right? Let's figure that out, right, in the upfront. Lastly, I would say be assertive about getting the information we need in order to deliver a good design, right? People don't know what you really need in order to do your job. You have to kind of actively go after it, right? I bluntly say, I miss this information from product management. I miss the information or decision from the engineering side. I can't move forward. There's no point for me to move forward until you make that decision. So help them, but be sure you get the information you need, right? So that'll be my thought. So.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. It's always about just like asking questions and not being afraid to be naive, like what Brian said in our keynote, and always willing to learn and taking feedback objectively. It's not about you, it's about the product. So don't be afraid to like ask for feedback as well and ask questions. And Kai, I saw you unmute.
Yeah, just one quick thing. The other thing that I've found works really effectively is thinking win-win. And so if you try to put yourself in the other stakeholders' shoes and what are their goals? Why are they behaving the way they are or responding the way they are? Basically, if you're an effective mind reader, in that sense, like you can actually understand how to approach the conversation more clearly, and align your proposal, your request, because everything is about a give and take. Like you're asking someone to do something for you, or vice versa, you have to do something for some other team. And so it contextualizes these trade-offs and these decisions that need to happen to collaborate. And I think that's essentially, especially if it's cross-team. So when it's not cross-function, maybe you're collaborating with other PMs, other designers, etc. A lot of the like what I've seen work is understanding each other's goals and presenting something that works for both sides.
Yeah, I love that. And just like making sure you're communicating well, so you're not missing any information, really just understanding each other. Diana, did you also have anything to add?
I think, I mean, most of the points are covered, if not all of them, but really resonate with developing trust between the people you're working with. Like I completely, I love the point about like really understanding the people you're working with, like giving them the time of day. Once you build the bonds that you do within your team, and it depends on where you're working, some places maybe you'll move around every 6 months, but taking that actual time to build that trust, that will go a long way. You'll go to bat for all the people on your team and they'll go to bat for you, right? And that opens up a lot of doors, because from there you develop trust with other parts of the organization, whoever you're collaborating with as partners, as stakeholders. And it kind of like all stems from that. Like, do they know who I am? And you know, that I'll support them in the decisions, and that we all agree that we need to build a great product together, and that all that stuff kind of really is built on a really strong foundation. So that's all I'll add.
Yeah, definitely +1 on trust. It's a foundation to everything, even like your real life relationships. So like everything relies on that. And head it off to Lisa for our next question.
Yeah, everyone made some really good points, and I think it actually ties really good to what we're doing here with Product Splash. So you guys probably never met your teammates before, so really make the most of it and get to know each other, develop that trust, because you never know, maybe down the line, if you guys had a great time, you guys could work on another project together, or you guys can really learn from each other. So yeah, so have fun with it and like develop trust, and you know, go for margaritas, virtual margaritas afterwards. Just shout out to Nico's point about that. I really enjoyed that small point. Yeah, great. Or even like launch a startup. There's so much possibilities. You can start just from this small cohort. So really develop that trust and get to know each other. And I think the comments we were talking about, like don't marry to your designs, or don't take things too personally, really ties into this next question. So kind of a smooth segue into that. So, and I think a lot of people in this chat, I'm not sure if it's more design heavy or PM heavy, but you guys might find that it's hard to balance between the business and product goal and the UX goals. There could be some sort of push and pull with that. So the next question we have is, how do you find the balance between the product's goal as a business and the user experience goal? So kind of addressing that age-old conflict between PM and UX, which I think it's going to be probably inevitable with all the teams to run into. But yeah, if anyone has any thoughts on this matter, feel free to just unmute.
I can just talk from the perspective that I'm familiar with at Shopify. I mean, it will vary team by team, just like it will vary company by company. You have Apple that builds very high quality user experiences and, you know, ships a couple times a year, versus, you know, other companies like Shopify that iterate much more quickly, but a little bit more scrappily. So for us, I think setting the actual outcomes that we expect to solve whatever problem we're trying to go for, I think is the most important thing. I think there's recently been a bigger shift towards building MVPs, iterating on them later. And that's made our user experience team more comfortable to, you know, reduce the amount of time spent on polishing specific products, where we collaborate with the user experience lead to make sure that we're both agreeing that we're solving a specific problem, and then we're both agreeing that the specific user experience that they're proposing is solving that problem, is enough for now, and is at least the beginning of the green path that we hope to follow. It's a lot. I mean, I'm not going to tell you it's easy. Like I've had my own set of like, this is too much. Like this is going to take 6 months to ship. And it's honestly communication and understanding, and, you know, asking the questions, the clarifying questions for the designers about, you know, why they feel a specific way, what their outcomes are for, you know, this specific product, that the area, and why they you know, feel connected to it. Oftentimes when you can have that open discussion, they can explain their points, you can explain yours. You do find a middle ground that actually benefits the product, rather than just kind of latching on to you know, your design or your product vision or whatnot. There has to be like a middle ground there. And I think reaching that has been how we push that forward at Shopify. One is not always better than the other. Like it's a matter of like, what problem are we actually trying to solve, and like, how do we do it together in an efficient way? And where do we go from there?
No, those are great points. Like, I think in this next 5 weeks, when you guys are probably working on your products and stuff, you'll probably run into this situation. So again, communication is key. It's cliche, but it's true. And also it kind of reminds me of the previous point. I forgot who said it, but the having empathy for your coworkers. At the end of the day, your goal, exactly, Grace. It's really important to realize your goals don't have to be separate. You know, you guys both just want to succeed. So it doesn't have to be this war against PMs and UX designers. It can be like a really fun collaboration. But yeah, does anyone else want to speak on that question?
Okay, I mean, I would just say, don't be at war with your PM. That will make your job miserable. Like, just don't go down that path, right? I would say ultimately a business about extracting value, aka making money for itself, right? By providing value to its customer, right? So if you're circling around value point of view, right, you want more or less the same thing, really. But I would say, first of all, like as a designer, right, we need to be the advocate of our end user and definitely voice up for our end user. That's part of our responsibility, our role, really, right? You can't abandon that. That's the bottom line. Then, you know, we, like Diana said, that we figure out the middle ground. What's the wiggle room, right? What can we trade off? What can be done by the constraint, whether it's a resource, time, or just pure capability, right? There's a lot of things that go into decision making. And basically you lend somebody something that everybody agree upon, and you move forward, right? So a lot of time as a designer, I see a situation. It's like, well, the train already leave the station, so there's not much I can do about it at this point, right? So you kind of like move on. But sometimes you can kind of like, yeah, I have the smallest thing I can do. It's not going to be the grand vision and get drop in, right? You just kind of like, I know like 3 years down the road, this is going to be the one, but I'm going to do the smallest things I can to say, nope, change this thing this way, right here, small things, right? Sometimes it takes a lot more convincing. That's where a lot of research can come in, like an evidence-based methodology, right? You really get at the data, you've done the research, you talk to data people. Hey, it's not me, right? That's what people are saying. That's what the data is reflecting, right? So, like, we probably should do this rather than an opinion piece, right? So that's the way to figure out way to do the right thing for the business and the end user, right? So that would be my take on this.
Yeah, exactly. Don't be afraid to speak up, guys. I know it's hard, and even for me, it's hard to be confrontational. It is, but how would you have a good product if you don't communicate what you're thinking, instead of holding that to yourself and being like, I don't want to say it, I don't want to ruffle any feathers, because that's just not going to work in the long run. So might as well start practicing now in this safe setting of Fluffle Buds. But yeah, anyone else want to speak on that question, or I can take it over to Grace?
I can go.
Go ahead.
Just a couple points to add to the earlier trust point. Just like make sure that you make it a priority to build rapport and like build relationship with your partners, right? Like anytime like I join a new project, I make it a point to like be very clear that I'm not a service provider and we're going to be partners. And like whatever you're worried about, I'm going to be worried about. And if you're underwater on a PM doc, like I will help you with that PM doc, right? Like I'm not above doing anything. So like when you come into a project with that kind of an attitude, like then you're not seen as a diva, which a lot of the time is what designers risk doing, right? Like I'm the designer, so I'm coming in and everything you did was wrong. And I know I have better empathy for customers than you do. So like, look at my designs. They're so much better than anything you've thought of, right? Like that's the opposite of what you want to do. Like, so come in, do it humbly, right? You're all equal players. And like, always, like I always like to think of it as like every time I'm working with a PM, we are like, they are now my colleague just as much as my fellow designers were my colleagues. We are now an even closer team than I am to my other designers, right? Like our success is just like attached to the hip to each other. And make sure that you're sensitive to and aware of all the work that they already did. So this is another thing that a lot of designers get in trouble with, is that they just come in, they do a user journey, they create hypotheses based off of some random stuff that they discovered, but they completely disregard the fact that like PM maybe already did customer segmentation. Maybe they already set what the vision is for the product. Maybe they already have a mission statement that is data informed, is actually good stuff, right? Like actually trust that they also have done some of that work. And lastly, I found that one of the best ways to be a strong contributor as a designer at a higher level, right? Like beyond just doing the work, is help your organization build a vision around where things are going. And building a vision isn't like a huge like unveil thing. Like you have to recycle it and redo it like constantly. But the idea being that if like instead of adding scope to projects that your PMs are giving you and like, hey, well, I know that in research that these things were also pointed out, so let's also tackle these things. But like there's literally no physical way to get engineers to do more work, right? Like have that fold into a broader theme and project and work on a vision with your PM, your marketing partners, your cross-functional partners, to where you guys can come back together in a longer term roadmap. I feel like as designers, a lot of the time we just try to shove as many projects into something that's very small in scope without providing a point of view on where the product should be headed. Because if we did that, we'd be putting our skin on the line. But like you just have to do that.
Yeah, I love that. It's all about teamwork and collaborating each other, not competing and not try to like one of each other, but working together towards like a common goal based on the problem we're trying to solve. Before I move on to the next question, does Kai want to say anything, Kai? I don't want to skip over you just in case. About balancing UX and product. Yeah.
I appreciate that. I mean, quick thought is, I think at the end of the day, it really depends on what gets you the most outcomes. So depending on the organization and team you're on, there's some teams that hands down will always prioritize user needs and user experience. And that's how they're structured, that's how they're incentivized, and also that's how they're funded. And so a lot of these, when you have these negotiations, it's, in my limited experience so far, it's a byproduct of a bigger effect, a bigger structural change that you can either drive or work around, right? So, there's often situations where you have to make the trade-off to drive specific business metrics. And putting that into context, like what you're making the trade-off because there's a bigger picture that you have to work with. And in some ways, you can actually change that bigger picture if you make a case for it. Of like, hey, we have to make this trade-off if we're operating in the way we are set up today. But if we were to change our success metric, like change the finish line, which the organization is working towards, to account for these things that we know will negatively impact the user experience, then we'll be better off in the long term, right? So there's a lot of these things are also time horizon, what's good short term versus long term side effects. So I think it helps to put things into perspective when you zoom out at not only your team, but your organization and also your company, depending on how big of a workplace you're at.
Yeah, I love that. Always think about long-term goals. And as Jack highlighted in the chat, what Yuri said, one of the best high-level ways to be a contributor is to help your organization build a vision of where things are going, like even like taking into consideration like long-term and everything too. And
being a designer, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, I love design as well. I like live and breathe design. Like I do design community, so it's all on my face every day. And as Lisa highlighted, some common themes for questions: communicate, compromise, and prioritize. Definitely working together as a team. Your team are your buddies, your Fluffle Buds together. And we have about 14 minutes left, but we're going to transition into like a question that was submitted on Luma, which is, do you have any examples of failures you have experienced which helped you propel your ability to become a stronger product manager or designer?
Yeah, I can share with you a failure. Yeah, I love failure stories because that's where you grow the most. And like when you have meetings with your manager and you're like, tell me how it can be better, and they only say nice things, you're like, no, tell me how it can be better. Anyways, I was working on the subscription APIs last year with my team on the orders team, and it was a brand new team. I had moved over there and developing trust, working to figure out how relationships works. And I think the biggest thing I learned there, we were in the process of scoping out what we were actually going to build out for the APIs. We had a short-term and a long-term approach where we basically got to, and we had trade-offs for each. And I would have to say that like that was the point where I took the side of the engineering team in terms of like, no, we have to do the long-term approach. This is like our platform would be catastrophic if we didn't, all this kind of stuff. And it took the product lead of like the whole effort to just be able to mentor me and have a really good chat with me to be like, but what happens in those 6 months when you didn't ship the thing that that like the timeline extended by 6 months? what happens? Like, they're still bleeding. Like, we have to stop the bleeding. What are merchants going to feel throughout that 6 months of you not shipping because you chose to do this larger platform extensibility? And that question just kept ringing in my head. And I took that feedback in and I was like, yeah, that's painful. That's 6 months. Like, that's going to be killer. Brought it back to the team and had a really solid conversation with them where I was like, timeline's not negotiable. Like, we have to get creative on figuring out a way forward. And we were able to find a middle ground where it was like, yeah, a little bit off the green path, but still able to like deliver the value that we wanted to deliver that year, and be able to iterate beyond that in the future. That failure like wasted time, and it taught me a valuable lesson about scoping and about like what happens if you don't deliver that value for your company, for the product, for the people on your team, everybody that's depending on you, and like taking that into consideration as one of the biggest risks that you have to like focus and figure out while you're prioritizing the product that you're doing. This year's been like, that's always in the back of my head.
Yeah, definitely. All about Nico. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, after you.
No, I want to give more time to our panelists. Yeah.
Well, just two quick ones come to mind for me. One's kind of like a stupid little one, and the other one's a little bit more serious and cost some money. The first one that I love to think back on was like, again, I'm completely self-taught. Like, I completely faked it. I didn't like know anything about design, and I just went and started selling design. And I remember having my first big break and finally getting an agency gig. I think I was doing something for like McDonald's or something. And it's like the second day on the job, and I'm like so excited. I've got my little MacBook, and no one knows I'd never used a Mac product before. I was all PC. And and there was another designer next to me, like working on the logo for the thing that I was working on. And I was like, hey, that's a really sweet logo. And he was like, thanks. And I was like, what font is that? And he was like, Helvetica. And I was like, oh, never heard of it. Where do I get it? And like the director of this agency is like standing right next to me, like, who the hell did we hire? Right. And it goes without saying, I didn't last the week there. But like the takeaway there was that like, don't like you're gonna fall on your face a lot in your career, and be okay with it. One of the things that I've learned and have embraced is that you're gonna get a lot of opportunities in your life to make new first impressions, right? And like, you just take what you learned from the last thing, like don't carry it with you. Just be like, okay, I should probably read up on typography and never make that mistake again. And then the second most the second more serious one is, I remember working on when I was at Amazon, I was working on a author facing platform product, and I successfully sold my engineering team to like increase the scope of how much time they spent on UI, increase level of polish, turn this really legacy desktop only thing into this really rich responsive thing, all the things, right? So I convinced them to do all that. And I chalked it up as a success, but the problem was that this thing that was supposed to get launched in 9 months took 2.5 years. So like, it still looks great in my portfolio, right? And no one knew any better, and engineers were just kind of like, oh man, this is taking forever. No one blamed me for it. But like, looking back at that, like, I know that it was because of a lot of my scope that project took a lot longer than it needed to take. So like, the takeaway for me from that, like to this point, has been like, be very sensitive to any scope that you add to a project, because like, no one cares about how good the UI looks if it never ships.
Yes, I love it. All about function, and then look comes secondary to that. But make sure you have your functionality down and solving the right problem. And I love how you said that you have a lot of chances in your life to make new first impressions. I definitely can relate to that a lot. Or Kai and Nico, did you also want to add anything to like examples of failures and anything you learned from that?
I probably won't say it's a failure, particularly or not a specific example. I but what I wish I know, and something I should have done earlier. That in the very early stage in my career, that like personally, I'm not that kind of person like conflict. I do all the things I can to avoid it, right? That could be very problematic. Well, like, later I realized that, well, in order for me to really do a good job, like to do a good design, deliver something meaningful, I have to feel comfortable about poking around, right? Ask the right questions, pull in the right people, generate something so-called like a positive conflict to just get the things going. Once you feel very, kind of like, it goes nowhere, going around the circle, that's where you need to do the trick and kind of like generate some of this conflict to get it going. I wish I've done it earlier in my career stage, and I wish I've done it a little bit more often, but that's boiled down just my personality thing, right? But it took me a while to realize that and sort of like cross correct in the way. That would be one of the things that I think I wish I've done it better. So
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Before, I was also afraid to stay from conflict, and sometimes you gotta like get things done. So yeah, on to you, Kai.
Yeah, along the lines Nico mentioned, I think one thing that I didn't do as much or wish I did more of is proactively keeping in touch with people from like past experiences, as well as like when you join a new team, actually setting up time with more than the people you directly work with, but also people who are, in the broader sort of team or organization, and really understanding what their like priorities are and how you can help them, and like understanding what are the problems that someone new can help like address or identify solutions for. So I think being more proactive in keeping in touch and reaching out, which I've started doing ever since I had that realization.
Yeah, definitely don't be afraid to reach out. People usually really, really appreciate it. And like hearing updates is always nice when I hear them from people, if I talked to them before. And we're gonna go for our last question. We're gonna wrap up soon and stay for our group photo, and make sure to share your takeaways on social media for giveaways. And I'm gonna kind of lump the kind of last two together. Is what is one piece of advice you would tell your younger self? If there's any, also if there's any like other advice you'd like to share with our Fluffle Buds, let us know as well.
I can start. Or Nico, you go ahead.
Okay. I would say a cliche, but it's very true. Everything will be fine by the end, right? It's really hard to remember that when you are in the midst of it. You just need to acknowledge it. Like everything's hard. It's never the end of it. Things like pouring rain outside, everything just pile on, super overwhelmed, super feeling crappy. Not my day, not my year even. But seems like, been around for a while, and what I realized, it's just like, yeah, everything is just fine. I did our job. We push it, no regret. It's good. Moving on, keep plugging along, and have fun along the way. Really. So that's what I would say to my younger self, really. Right.
I can go with my point. I think mine is more along the lines of like having patience. I'm an impatient person still, but I've gotten better. And I found that especially through the beginning of my career, I was just so focused on the next step rather than the step that I was in, that it's just like you're not giving the role you have or the experience that you're gaining in the moment like enough time to breathe and enough time to teach you things. And I think I stand by that really well when it comes to product. Like, just start with that project management stuff and then just move into execute until you're so good at it, and then move on. And like, I just find that we live in a world that's like super fast paced. where we don't give enough patience and like be present in the moment. So like that's kind of my biggest advice to myself, and like I still try to practice this now and stay focused on one thing, not many. But I think that is just something that like I think really, if I had done more of that earlier on, like maybe I would have found my path sooner potentially, rather than trying to find the next thing to latch onto.
I can go. So I'd say just enjoy the journey and just don't be so stressed. Because like every year of my professional life, I've always been stressed about like the next thing. So like, you know, my first year, I was stressed about where I was going to get my next paycheck. And then I was stressed about how to go from local logos to big logos. Then I was stressed about how am I going to get into big tech, right? Then you get stressed about how am I going to get my promotion? You're always going to be stressed about something. And you don't really realize, just like life, you don't realize the good times until they're gone. And you don't fully appreciate the quality of people that you're working with until you're working with a lower quality of people. So, and like that comes in waves. So just, I'd say just like, for everyone, you know, regardless of discipline, whether it's design or PM or whatever, just enjoy your colleagues, right? Like a lot of the time, like it's easy to ignore how interesting people are outside of the product that you guys are working on together, right? Like I just found out that one of my colleagues like grew up in a convent. I'm like, how did I not know that? We've been working for like a year, right? So like, just, you know, get to know each other, and like the product will take care of itself. The money will take care of itself. Your career will be perfectly fine. The career, one of my old managers told me that life is short, but careers are uncomfortably long, right? Like it's like you'll have plenty of time to get all that stuff, but just like enjoy the moment, enjoy the product you're currently working on, and just like be the best you that you can be, so that you can look back on that time with pride.
I guess a quick piece from me is figure out, like constantly like try to see what actually makes you happy or what you actually enjoy doing. Because a lot of times you initially won't have much choice because you get put on projects, and so you may or may not like it. And so really understanding what aspect of the experience you enjoy versus what parts are not for you, and then making moves or decisions with that intentionality. I think overall, like that is something that I think the earlier you start, the sooner you get to like that ideal state. And the ideal state keeps changing, but that will be the main piece there: reflection and intentionality.
Yeah, I love everything y'all share. Definitely need to learn from just enjoying the journey and not stressing too much and finding what makes you happy, because life is too short to live under someone else's dream. And I feel like a lot of us can relate to having like peers and stuff telling us you gotta like find like, I don't know, at least for me, from my background, it's like doctor, engineer, lawyer. But life is too short to live under someone else's like wishes for you. We're gonna do a group photo, so we're gonna give it a few seconds for everyone to turn on their camera. You can find our Zoom background on Discord. It should be emailed to you as well. You can just find it in your email. Should be there with the opening ceremony email from like last week. But I'll give it a few seconds for people to turn on their camera to be in our lovely group photo. We're going to do 2 rounds. We're going to do a static photo and also one for our Instagram story where you all see each other, all our Fluffle Buds together. And then definitely if you found anything insightful or something you learned today, definitely post it on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, tag all of our speakers, tag Design Buddies, tag Product Buds, and we will reshare it and comment and support y'all. And make sure to use the hashtag #ProductSplash2020. And we will be picking people randomly each week to give our free 1-year Adobe Creative Cloud, which will be announced at the end of each week on Discord and on email. And I'm going to count down 5 seconds so everyone turn on their camera. Seems like people are still getting ready, but #ProductSplash2020, make sure to follow all of our speakers as well. Send them a nice thank you note. and I will take the photo. So we're gonna do a static one first and then a wave one. This is kind of what we did in the opening ceremony, kind of what we do at L Design Buddies events, just to like hype y'all up. Get excited to apply all the knowledge you've learned. So with that, I'm gonna do a static one. So just hold smiling for a while. Feel free to like bring in your stuffed animals if you want to. I'm gonna count down 5, 4, hold smiling until I'm done. 3, because multiple pages. 2, people start to turn on the camera. 1, say Fluffle Buds. Fluffle Buds. All right, next page. All right, feel free to grab any stuffed animal you want, or parents' plushies, whatever you want. I always have my Lakuma bear. We're gonna do a wave for our Instagram story. So here we go. I'm gonna whip up my Design Buddies Instagram. All right, let me pull down my window. All right, ready, set, wave, you can dance, you can dance. Hello, Fluffle Buds. We just had an insightful discussion on design and product management and cross-functional collaboration. Thank y'all for coming, Product Splash Fluffle Buds. Awesome. I held my Lakuma straight this time. Cool. That concludes our event. If all of our speakers can stay for like a quick 5-minute retrospectives, I'll open up a waiting room. But this event, I'll drop the YouTube recording below. So in case y'all miss any of it, it's in there. And I'll send it to all of you afterwards if you register Luma. But thank you all so much for coming. Make sure to share your takeaways on social media. And I will stop live streaming to YouTube right now. So